This short training video is going to cover the aspect of basing for the game. Basing, of course, is going to cover infantry, cavalry, artillery, and train unit basing. In addition, it's also going to describe how the formations are represented by the style of basing for the individual figures. That being said, the first thing that's going to come up is 3-rank or a 3rd rank type basing formation, which is common to almost all the European powers, and in this case the Ottoman Empire too. Now, individual figures are based on a frontage of 1/2 inch with a 1 inch depth. So if I was to pull a single figure out of this line here, you would see that the frontage is 1/2 inch and the depth is 1 inch. And this is common to all infantry with a 3-rank or 3rd rank type basing formation. Just as a general note, all the infantry figures in the game are based on a 1 inch depth, and that's mainly due to the scale of the figures. In theory they should be shorter, but due to the size of the figures we use a full 1 inch basing. The frontage, though, is the key component of the basing. For a 3-rank or a 3rd rank type formation, it will always be 1/2 inch per figure. Now if you happen to use a double figure type basing, where you put 2 figures together, example over here, you would see this is 1 inch wide and 1 inch depth. But again, it's basically 1/2 inch per figure. Now as you base your units, you want to make certain that you have sufficient change in the units to take off losses. And also your elite companies or elite units, for instance like this Carabiniere and this Legere battalion, or the Voltigeur, which is on the other end of the line here, they should always be based on single figure basing. At the same time, the internal chasseurs of this Legere battalion should also have a couple of single figures, and then you can always have a double or 2. But keep in mind, the art of being able to have change and be able to use or separate out the elite companies is a strong system of basing individualized figures. That being said, as you can see, the Ottomans are deployed in a massed formation, and this is common to the Ottoman national characteristics. All their infantry, with the exception of a couple of European trained units, will always be based in double rank formations. And this is to represent that they're actually not really a 3-rank formation. They're actually deployed in 4, 5, or maybe even 6 ranks deep as a common tactic of the Ottoman army. They were a little bit more old scale, and they more of a used earlier patterns of formations and movement. So to represent this in the game, we just make it simple. We base them on a 3-rank type formation, but at the same time they're always going to be doubled up, with of course the exception of their European trained Ottoman infantry. Those would be standardized 3-rank type formations, because that's how they were trained. Now your skirmisher type units, or skirmishers which are part of inherent of a battalion, should always be in a single figure type basing like this. With that completed, I'm now going to move on and describe 2-rank formation basing. Prior to this segment, I described the 3-rank or 3rd rank basing system. We're now going to move on to the 2-rank or double rank type basing systems. And typical for this period, the English-styled armies, including the later period Portuguese, and in some cases some of the Germanic light battalions, utilized a double rank or 2-rank formation. And the way this is represented in the game is that the basing of the individual figures is actually done wider than the old style of 3-rank formations. As you can see on an individual figure, instead of it being 1/2 inch like it was for the 3-rank basing system, it has now gone up to 3/4 of an inch, or basically 50% larger compared to a 3-rank figure. I'll pull one out of the line here as a comparison. This one's 1/2 inch wide for 3-rank. This one, for a 2-rank formation, is 3/4 of an inch wide. So by default, on the tabletop, your 2-rank formations, when they go into a linear type formation, are going to occupy a greater frontage of the figures. As before, the elite companies or light type companies, you should always base on an individual basis. For example, there's one out here on the end of this battalion's line. And you may, if you wish to, make double figure basing for the center company type figures. But if you do, basically what it is 1.5 inches wide for both figure basing, but it's effectively 2 3/4 inch wide figures individually based. Your light battalions under the 2-rank system are based the same as their brethren. When they close up the ranks and the formations, they would be looking like a 2-rank formation. But when they go out into skirmisher or open order mode, their figures are going to be a little bit wider. But that has no effect on the game because skirmishing frontage is based upon a frontage or an area of length and not the actual individual figures. That's described again in the formation segment of our training videos. As you can see, we have here a 6-figure English firing line. This happens to be representative from the Honorable East India Company. And if I was to deploy this French Leger battalion alongside, you can have a comparative analysis and can see what I mean by this being much narrower in width compared to the English battalion. Same number of figures, different frontage. And last but not least, as we're covering the double rank line here, the English armies have a tendency to also have a tactic of making a double ranking of their formation, i.e. a 4-rank line, which I'll cover more in the formation segment thing, but I deployed one here just for this segment of the training video. And this is basically two ranks back to back. With that being said, that covers the 2-rank formations of how to base your figures for a 2-rank infantry depth. The last infantry basing system to cover is called tribal basing. It is unique to the North African tribes of the Ottoman Empire, some of the units in the Far East, and of course the North American Indians. Tribal basing is different, unlike 2-rank and 3-rank, in that the basing is represented on an individual figure basis by a 1-inch by 1-inch base. If you happen for some reason to put 2 figures together, it would be represented on a 2-inch by 1-inch basis. Tribal basing is always considered to be a formed unit, but unlike the 2-rank and 3-rank formation units, it is always considered to be in a semi-open order formation, so therefore it will always take half firepower effect casualties. Gives them somewhat an advantage in a firefight, but at the same time they are very brittle when hit by moving cavalry things at you, because for instance they can never form a square, and they'll be considered an open order formation in any shock combat situation. If for some reason you wish to dismount some cavalry, then you place the individual figures on a 1-for-1 basis on the tabletop as dismounted cavalry figures. And they're always typically based on a 3-rank formation, therefore it would be ½ inch wide for the individual figure with a 1-inch depth. If you had a 5-figure French chasseur regiment, it would dismount into a 5-figure dismounted French chasseurs. Conversely, the same thing would apply for French dragoons, being represented by the 6-figure dismounted French dragoon regiment back here. Again, it's 3-rank formation for all cavalry dismount figures. And when you do dismount cavalry, just as a side note, it's all or none. You can't leave some figures mounted and have other figures dismounted in the game. Last but not least, we have the American Woodland Indians out here. As you can see, are based on a tribal type formation. And in this particular example, they've been put out into an open order type formation. In this case, a full or semi type formation. Full will be a little bit wider. And last but least, we have a French Leger battalion in semi-skirmisher formation and an English rifle battalion in a full skirmisher formation. As you can see, a semi is a little bit narrower compared to a full when it goes to full extent. That concludes all the infantry basing. Next step or next segment is going to cover cavalry.